Welcome back to The Long Game. We are on a mission to demystify the science that shapes our lives and to unpack how great ideas, built here in Scotland, become real-world medicines, devices, and new companies at the cutting edge of life sciences. I'm Ross Kagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at the University of Glasgow.
Hi, I'm Sandy Weir, Tech Innovation Leader and Strategic Program Manager, joining you from Edinburgh.
Hey, Sandy. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Ross. Actually, you might even say that I have a special energy today that everyone has got in themselves, a feeling that everything is possible. But more on that later. If you know, you know.
We're going to be talking about murder today, so I'm assuming that's not where you're
No,
going with your
it's not
special
that.
magical energy,
It's not that
because
bit.
fortunately, we're actually doing this at a distance, or I'd be a little worried. We have plenty of time to make jokes about murderers. So today is our first in actually a series here at The Long Game, Biotech and Crime. And today we're going to discuss an inside threat crime that occurred pretty much in my backyard, although it lands in your backyard as well, on Sochi Hall Street in Glasgow. Though, of course, things were a little bit different in those days in 1865 than they are today.
Yeah, that's right, Ross. Today we're talking about the ultimate bug in the system. We're looking at a man who had the credentials, the respect of the community, and the legal authority to sign off on life and death. And he used all that to commit the perfect crime, or at least so he thought.
That's right. And we'll make it clear why we picked this particular crime to kick off. It actually has very much to do with pathology and biotech. We're going to talk about the kind of creepy story of Dr. Edward William Pritchard. So to his neighbors, and they always say this, he was a pillar of the community. I'm sure they never saw it coming. To history, he is known as the Glasgow Poisoner, which is the best nickname ever. And actually, of note, last man to be publicly hanged in Glasgow. He's also the man whose crimes sort of accidentally jump-started forensic toxicology.
Yeah, Ross, in the business, we talk about trust as a currency. If you're a doctor, your brand equity is massive, and you have a license that says, "I'm an expert. You can trust me with your life." And actually, this trust is enshrined in an ancient oath, right? We both know this, the Hippocratic Oath. I don't mean to derail us, but I'm going to expand a little bit about this, and it's
Of course,
important. The Hippocratic Oath is the oldest and most widely known treatise on medical ethics. So this is where medical ethics really all started. And nearly all medical graduations refer to and uphold this oath, and it requires that all physicians swear by numerous duties and responsibilities around how they're going to treat and interact with their patients. And actually, I'm pretty fortunate. I visited the Asclepion, the ancient Greek healing temple, where Hippocrates is believed to have received his medical training on his native island of Kos. It's really fascinating. I really recommend going there if you ever get the chance. Anyway, back to our story. Back to Dr. Edward Pritchard.
I like the way you framed that because that really sort of points hard to why this is disappointing is not even the right word to this, but why it's really pretty shocking. Pritchard actually used his medical degree as a shield, as we'll learn. So when his mother-in-law, Jane Taylor, died, and then his wife, Mary Jane, died shortly after, he didn't just stand by. Incredibly, he signed their death certificates himself.
Yeah, talk about a conflict of interest. In modern clinical trials, of course, we make these double-blinded studies specifically to stop that sort of data manipulation. You can't be the person that's both running the experiment and auditing the results.
Yeah, although I'm not sure that's the only reason to keep to keep the researcher from murdering everybody. Um, so nicely said. In 1865, the auditor in this case was just the local doctor's word. So things did not have the structure that they had now. And you could say that Pritchard was falsifying the data. We got to stop these. He claimed his wife died of gastric fever, his mother-in-law of paralysis and apoplexy. So he was using a bunch of medical jargon to create a narrative, a product narrative, that actually hid what turns out to be a pretty dark reality.
Yeah, indeed. And if we look at his product choice.
We
It's
gotta
probably
stop.
probably a poor way to frame it, but nevertheless, he wasn't using a gun or a knife or anything as crude as that. He was using his knowledge of chemistry, and I would say this was a kind of spin on an early example of precision medicine, precision poisoning, Ross.
Oh no, don't say that to me, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine. But you're not wrong, and you know how much I've been advocating for complex drug cocktails, so let's do this. So it turns out Pritchard actually beat me to this. He used a cocktail approach, so hats off to him. Specifically, he used antimony and aconite. So aconite, a lot of us know it as wolfsbane. It's very pretty, also known as the devil's helmet, and contains a very potent neurotoxin, aconitine, which, among other things, can stop your heart. Just getting it on your skin can make you ill. So it's pretty potent, and it's been a very popular way to kill people over the centuries. In fact, rumor has it that Socrates was poisoned with aconite, not hemlock. Shocking. So during the pandemic, the president of Kyrgyzstan, I've got to throw this in there, promoted aconite root as a treatment for COVID. Not surprisingly, that didn't go well. And they had to stop doing that after a few people got sent to the hospital for poisoning. But actually, antimony is the sneakiest one. Besides being used as an additive for a variety of things, such as tin and semiconductors, so it's very bright and shiny for those of you who are curious. You should go check it out. But the reason we don't make stuff of just straight antimony is that it oxidizes very quickly, turns black. And in fact, it was a very popular eye cosmetic or common eye cosmetic called kohl in ancient Egypt. So it's a very slow burn metallic poison. And that's the key that Pritchard took advantage of. So it mimics illness over weeks. You get cramps, you get vomiting. It's really hard to detect because these symptoms, they look like all sorts of other different, more natural diseases. And because it's taken up very slowly by the gut, it acts very slowly. And that makes it even more difficult to detect if you're using it for evil intent.
Yeah, it's devious. It's devious, Ross. And he used the appearance of care as cover. What looked like food and medicine was in fact the means of poisoning his wife and mother-in-law. The food and the medicine that he gave them, tapioca, cheese, and the other remedies, they looked like an attempt to nurse his loved ones back to health. But of course, in reality, the food was the delivery mechanism. And records showed that Pritchard purchased more antimony than all the other doctors combined in Glasgow at that time. I'm not sure exactly where he sourced the wolfsbane from, but since it's Chelsea Flower Show, let's have a little bit of
No.
look at this for all those horticulturists that are listening. So wolfsbane, it's a sort of purple flowering plant. I personally think it looks a little bit like a foxglove. I'm not sure. I've not seen it. I don't know if the sort of dimensions are similar, but it does look a little bit like a foxglove. And it thrives in damp woodlands, meadows, along ditches throughout Scotland. But don't go seeking it out, as you've said, Ross. It's pretty nasty, especially the roots, the seeds, the leaves. It's highly toxic. So if you did find it, please don't go touching it.
Okay, good advice. And actually, this is the sort of practical knowledge you can expect from the long game.
Gardening.
Gardening, exactly. I love it. And also, I want to add that actually the wife went to Edinburgh, felt better, came back to Glasgow, and got sick again. And so it does make me a little suspicious that maybe she just came back, had too many sausage rolls. I'm just throwing that out there, just thinking out of the box. But as we'll see, the case was pretty tight here. But now we're at the point of our story where this technological arms race begins. So Pritchard thought he was the smartest guy in the room because his poisons were undetectable. And up to that point, they were undetectable. But what he didn't realize is that forensic science was just about to emerge and have its Instagram chasing OJ in a Bronco moment
That's so good. Oh, that's such a brilliant link. This
of a certain age.
this is certainly my favorite part of the story. The external audit. I mean, who doesn't love an external audit, right? So an anonymous letter was sent to the Procurator Fiscal's office in Glasgow. So they're in charge of all the prosecutions, obviously. And that was suggesting that those deaths were suspicious and maybe we should have another look at these. So they called in consultants from Edinburgh. I'm just going to say that again, Ross, but a little slower. They called in consultants from Edinburgh, and these were forensic experts, Dr. Douglas McGlacken and Dr. Henry Duncan Littlejohn.
Eh, poisons, no. Sausage roll, experts. We each have our strengths. I will give you this. At least at that time, these definitely were the data scientists of pathology. So the key point, and this is why we're connecting this back to the topics of the long game, they didn't just look at the bodies. So in those days, if you couldn't see it by your eye or with a magnifying glass, then there was really no other data to get. But they didn't just look at the bodies. They actually used chemical reagents to find traces of the poisons, things that would bind to, chelate, and stabilize and basically pull out these metals. So antimony is actually a stable metal. It doesn't just disappear. It hangs around in the tissues. And this, of course, was the weak link in retrospect of Pritchard's approach to this.
Yeah, it hangs around, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right, Ross. I guess this is generally considered to be the very birth, the starting point of forensic toxicology. And before this, as you said, if you couldn't see it with your own eyes or a magnifying glass, it was really difficult to prove that murder had been performed. But these guys proved that the chemistry could provide the scientific proof, right? The bulletproof evidence that, well, essentially was Pritchard's undoing.
Yeah. And actually, Sandy, the key was that what they found inside the body, crazy amounts of antimony. So once that was clear, the explanation changed. These people didn't just randomly die, which apparently happened in those days. They had been poisoned. And can I say, Sandy, how is it possible we're having this much fun and joy on this pretty sick story?
Oh, I
But
know, I know.
anyway, it's very clear that they were poisoned. And you can see how this became just, a sensation.
Yeah,
What do you think,
it was
Sandy?
really big news at the time, and Pritchard's trial really gripped the entire nation. People were really horrified, not only by the murders, but the very idea that he used his position as a doctor to cover up his crime, to hide the murder. It was really terrible. And so falsifying those medical reports became, or the understanding of those falsifications became the key part of the prosecution's case. They showed that he had poisoned his victims, that he'd also then tried to make it look natural, tried to cover it up by his claims and those records. And that's what makes the case so important, because it exposed the dangerous weakness that existed in the system. Essentially, a doctor's signature could carry enormous authority, even when the doctor himself was the killer.
Yeah, and we do it periodically hear in today's news about a nurse or somebody who is doing something vaguely similar, or maybe a modern version of this. But basically, in general, doctor can't just sign a death certificate for a family member. If you do that, that actually will trigger an alert. And we've actually built a regulatory moat around the doctor profession to prevent these insider threats like Pritchard.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, if you step back from it, you think about, what lessons can we learn? Well, I guess we could all look a little bit more skeptically at our GP the next time we're visiting. But no, I'm not suggesting you do that. I think one of the lessons we can learn as bio-entrepreneurs really is the concerns that we have for validation. So even when you've got great credentials, but if your data can't survive the independent audit, the likes of McLachen and Littlejohn, then your company is going to fail. And a great example about how badly things can go wrong in this regard in the modern era, just take a look at Theranos, the Silicon Valley health startup founded by Elizabeth Holmes. We might come back around on that story sometime on the podcast. But meanwhile, in biotech, trust but verify, trust but verify. It's the only way to play the long game.
Yeah, or as a mentor of mine, the late, great scientist Phil Needleman, who was just an amazing guy, but he used to say his favorite saying was, "In God we trust, everyone else brings data." In fact, I think he even had a mug that said that. And I also, for our listeners, I'm going to put a picture up. So if you can't come to our website and hopefully you can find it, but find a picture of Pritchard. Honestly, if you just look at the picture, it's very clear that he was going to murder his mother and his wife. Just just have a look at the picture. It's quite clear. So s- so hopefully I know I really had a blast learning more about this. I'm sick as it is. But speaking of playing the long game, it's time to wrap up our show with our final segment, A Wee Bit of Joy.
Yeah, Ross, we need to bring some light back into the conversation now. So tell us, my friend, what's brought you joy this week?
Well, since we're doing the Glasgow versus Edinburgh thing, I just want to say we should just have a podcast of just to have the two face off. But in terms of murder, from what I can see, I think Glasgow is doing pretty well on that side of things. But for my wee bit of joy, I just want to begin with what felt like a very magical, very Scottish Saturday. So I've been here now 6 years in this lovely country, and it just struck me this past Saturday, this is sort of a end-to-end Scottish/European day, and I just want to share that as my wee bit of joy. So in the morning, my wife and I went hiking in the lowlands with our dog. Of course, there's a castle, check. Fairy Glen, check. Lots of beauty, check. So all of that. And it was just, at some point, it's just part of our rhythm. It's really quite lovely. And it was a lovely walk, maybe 20-minute drive from our place in Glasgow. In the afternoon, we watch Celtic, the Glasgow Celtic, beat the Hearts, the Edinburgh Hearts, to win the league. And I have to, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Did you say anything there, my friend? So Celtic beat the Hearts to win the league on the last day. I can't believe I've become a Celtic fan. I don't even know the rules of soccer. But anyway, so we watched that. So that's about as Scottish as it gets. And even though my wife Yumi and I are more basketball fans, we were just pumped. We were super excited when they scored the winning goal. We actually got really in there. So we had hills, we had castles, the dog, we got football. So I'm really starting to feel like a Scot. But actually, none of this is what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about was how we finished off in the evening. That's right, Sandy. Let's talk about Eurovision. So now many Americans, including myself, I'd heard of Eurovision as a word, but really didn't understand exactly what it is and especially why people were so into it. So is it a song contest? Yeah, it's that. Is it a political summit with sequins? Well, there's been a lot of drama lately. So yeah, it's definitely that. Is it, a continent-wide fever dream with choreography? Buckets of choreography. Yeah. It's all of that. So it's sort of tongue in cheek. And if you don't understand that, then it seems dumb. And it is kind of dumb, but that's, of course, the brilliance of it. So we watched the final with friends, shout out Julia and Henry, and just totally into the kitsch of it. So not our first Eurovision rodeo either, Sandy. We played Eurovision bingo. So with squares for things like wind machines, key change, costume change, fire, lots of fire there. I got that immediately. And all the stuff that pretty much reliably happens on the contest, like lying down on your back with the camera shooting down. That's all guaranteed. And in fact, one of my squares, which I thought was going to be tough, turned out to be easy, which was whether a person was wearing leather or pleather. And if you don't know what pleather is, Sandy, please look it up. And just to finish this, the winning song, Bangaranga, of course, by Bulgaria's Dara, not what the bookies expected. So just like the Celtic beating the Hearts, coming all the way back and finishing the deal, so Bulgaria came through in the end, bucked the bookies, and won with a song called Bangaranga. And if you think that stands for something, it doesn't. It's just a word. So I loved it. And just to finish, out of 25 countries, once again, the UK came in last. So all in all, Sandy, just really an epic Scottish Saturday.
Yeah,
What do you think?
Awesome. And your Saturday sounds perfect. Apart from the football outcome, of course. But yeah, and the Eurovision Song Contest, I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And that's what I was alluding to in my intro today. So when I said I have a special energy today that everyone has got in themselves, a feeling that everything is possible. Well, when Dara was asked to explain what Bangaranga actually meant, that's how she explained it. So It was
Yeah, yeah.
quite
I saw a different
extraordinary.
interview, and she had a completely different definition
Yeah,
for it.
it probably changed. It probably changed.
Totally.
Oh dear. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Ross. That was really entertaining. And I guess for me in follow up, yeah, my wee bit of joy this week has been connecting with my local history. So forgive me, Ross. I'm going to tell a wee bit of a story here, but I think you're going to like it, and I think you're going to like what I've done. I go running regularly. Near my home, in and around northwest of Edinburgh, so in places like Davison Mains, Blackhall, Ralveston, and Crammond. If you know Edinburgh, all those names will mean something to you. But like most joggers, I have my favourite route, and mine takes me past this old stone water well that sits close to the entrance of Davison's Mains Park. Well, this water well is important to me because it's historic. It's actually quite aesthetic as well. It's a stone structure with lime render. I always kind of harbored wishes to be an architect, so I've got a big appreciation for these
Yeah, you'd
types
be
of old
amazing.
structures. And it's really built to last. It's about 200 years old. It doesn't look 200 years old in terms of its condition. But most importantly, it tells me I've got about a kilometre left to go before I'm back home. I get some welcome relief for my run. So anyway, why do I bring this up? Well, you've probably been reading a lot about the Ebola virus in the news this week. It's terribly sad events unfolding in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. And this water well has been kind of on my mind. So around about 180 years ago, there was terrible cholera and typhoid outbreaks that were causing real suffering and death in Edinburgh. Most notably, there was cholera outbreaks in Edinburgh in 1832, and then again these are sort of large scale ones in 1849, and then again in 1854. So this was a kind of recurring problem. And in fact, it's really fascinating because I think the first instances of cholera were in India, around I think 1817 or something like that. First recorded cholera outbreaks that were in India, and it reached Edinburgh spread through the. I don't know if you've ever heard of the East India Company, but it was through the connection between UK and people moving back and forward between India. That's what led to the outbreak in Edinburgh. That and the very squalid conditions in Edinburgh at the time. So this all sounds very cheery, doesn't it? And why is
Kind of
this?
waiting for the cheer
Oh,
part,
yeah,
but
why
sure.
is this my wee bit of joy? Well, seeing that water well reminds me of, as I say, nearly completing my run, which is always really positive. But it also reminds me of how the power of science and ingenuity, and this is going to blow you away, Ross. So it was Edinburgh's very first medical officer, Sir Henry Duncan Littlejohn. Yep, that's the
At the
same
same
Henry Duncan Littlejohn that there was the forensic scientist that helped prosecute Dr. Edward Pritchard in our main story in the pod. I believe forensics was what we would now call a bit of a side hustle for Henry. Wasn't his main job. He was just very, very good at a number of different things, and he got involved in the community. Well, he understood the connection between squalor, sanitary conditions, and the need for clean water. And he also knew what the source and this was the source of the cholera outbreaks that had been besetting the city. So when he became medical officer in Edinburgh in 1862, one of the things he did was he wrote a very convincing report to demonstrate the link between deprivation, disease, and mortality. And this in turn led to new regulations which governed the supply of fresh water in Edinburgh, which transformed the plumbing and the sewage in the city, which in turn brought fresh, clean water to every home in the city. No longer did people in Edinburgh have to trek to the local well for their drinking water. Alas, it was the end of the practical working life of the wee water well that I see on my run. And I have Henry Littlejohn to thank for the clean, fresh water that's in my tap every time I turn it on. I guess Henry and Scottish water, I suppose.
yeah.
But yeah, it's an amazing link. So that little bit of joy I found in looking into my local history and this well that I see each time I go for my run, that's connected back to our main pod story today. And I guess it also kind of sadly has reminded me of all those unfortunate people in Central Africa who are at the epicenter of this current Ebola outbreak. And it kind of also reminds me just how fortunate we are and how vulnerable we can be. It's really not that long ago in our history that we were facing similar problems and similar epidemics. And I guess that's also quite sobering. So, but end in a positive. Local history, isn't it
That
fascinating?
that's an amazing coincidence, an amazing story. Yeah, and I'll actually be out in that area in about a month. And so we've been following the unfolding. As you say, it's just really unfortunate. But that's crazy that you run by a well several times a week. That connects right to our story.
Isn't it incredible?
That is pretty amazing. It's just amazing. So, as we were discussing earlier, in choosing different murders, there is no end to the number of choices that we could have done. So, no doubt we're going to have more murders lined up, and I hope everybody enjoys them as much as we do, and we will always try to connect them back to something in modern biotech or modern things connected to biotech. So we'll have more history. So coming up, we'll have more history, more murders, but we'll also begin to extend our series, which we had started with cancer, about some of the diseases that are also important. So we're not just going to go off on the deep end on murders and history. We are going to get back to some of the nuts and bolts of understanding what are the health issues here in Scotland and elsewhere, help everybody really understand them and what we can do about those, and also use those to lift us all up economically as well as health-wise, and really sort of lay out the opportunity for Scotland biotech to really flex and help out. So with that said, what do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, well said, Ross. Well said, and that's an excellent way to round things off. It's always nice to look at those key points in history that kind of influence our thinking today, and what we can learn from that. And that's what we're trying to do by looking backwards in these odd occasions in the pod where we get the opportunity to do that. But we won't lose sight of looking forward to and the exciting new things that are on the horizon. So I think that's going to lead to us wrapping up our pod for today. And I still have Bangaranga ringing in my ears, Ross. I'm not sure about you.
I know, I do. It's bad.
I even found myself sticking it on my playlist as I was driving.
Okay, I didn't go that far.
So much energy.
Amazing
so
you said that out loud, Sandy.
I don't know how long it's going to last there, but
it's okay. It's all good.
Exactly. Right. So until the next time, folks, let's keep the heat and the best of luck playing the long game, Ross. Thank you very much.
Thanks. See y'all.
Yeah, see the vision clear. We're here to run the long game. Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game. The long game.